Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here to discuss new models in manufacturing. I know we are all super excited to have this conversation. We've already had healthy debates on our planning call, so I think this is going to be a lot of fun. As we all know, manufacturing investment, how much to invest at what time of development is always a topic at conferences. And I think that we all agree on this panel that things have changed a little bit. New models have emerged, new technologies have emerged. We see things like joint ventures, academic spinouts into larger manufacturing facilities, and I think selling of capacity. So I think things in the industry are really getting interesting. So I hope you find value in this panel conversation. I'm Susan Nichols. I'm Chief Business Officer for ViroCell Biologics, and it's my pleasure to introduce Eric.
Well, thank you, Susan. My name's Eric Blair. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Andelyn Biosciences, and also happy to introduce Andelyn. Our name comes from Andrew and Evelyn, which are two pioneering patients that we put together to reinforce and remind us every day that that's why we do what we do. And we're a 100% gene therapy CDMO.
Do you want me to introduce myself?
Yes, please.
Hi, so I'm Frédéric Desdouits. I'm the CEO at TreeFrog Therapeutics. As you can hear, it's a French biotech company. And we are built on the backbone of a technology to manufacture iPSC-derived organs. And we have the pleasure to have a technology which is already, let's say, commercial scale ready. So I will explain that afterwards a little bit more.
Thank you.
Behzad?
So good afternoon. So Behzad Mahdavi, I'm a Senior Vice President of Biopharma Manufacturing and Life Science Tools at Ginkgo. My background, which has happened also to be my passion, is very simple, is at the interface of technology, market, finance, and the patient, and is consisting on developing the patient-centric growth strategies. So prior to Ginkgo, I was with Lonza and Catalan, so heavy background CDMO.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dan Smith. I'm the Exec Director for the Global Cell and Gene Therapy portfolio within Charles River. I report into strategic partnerships and corporate development. My background is also CDMO. I joined Charles River through acquisition about 18 months ago, where I was the CSO at Cobra Biologics for a long time, based in the UK, before we were acquired by Cognate, and then into Charles River. So it's been an interesting journey for the last 3 years of acquisitions, mergers, integrations, and everything. I'm also passionate about things. I'm passionate about working in collaboration and thinking about how we can use partnerships and different interfaces between disciplines to really drive the field forward for cell and gene therapy. So Charles River, as you know, has acquired a CDMO division now, and I think that really sort of supplements and synergizes with the end-to-end capability that we have all the way through from discovery, safety assessment, now into clinical and ultimately commercial manufacturing, and wrapped all around that safety testing as well from Charles River. So yeah, pleasure to be here today.
And last and least, Arthur Tzianabos, Chairman of Homology Medicines, former CEO. Albert Seymour is in the audience, is now CEO. He threatened to run me over in the parking lot and until I left the chair, so here I am as chair. Very happy to be here today. Homology Medicines is an AAV-based gene editing company with the mission of bringing, hopefully, cures to patients who are living with rare disorders. And a lot of us have been in the business a long time and really looking forward to today's discussion, because manufacturing is really, really, really important when you really want to accomplish that mission. And I think we'll get into that today.
So on that note, I think I'm going to start in reverse.
See, I knew you were
because I can. So there's historically two schools of thought between outsourcing and building capacity, right? And you have experience building your own facility. So my question to you is, what happens when you build this and you have some downtime? What do you do to keep people, to keep facility, to really keep going?
So I can start. We started in 2016 at Homology, and it was Albert, myself, and 5 other people. And we really took these AAV vectors from the City of Hope, and they had some unique properties. And so we wanted to build a portfolio around that. And you have the greatest plans to move your programs as fast as you possibly can. And we got an IND within 3 years. And we used an external CDMO, great partner. But we just wanted to get control of that capability as fast as we can, because when time is money and you have investors in your company, and we went public in 2018, you can't waste time. And if you lose time, it really hurts. So we wanted to have our destiny in our own hands. So we built our manufacturing facility with the permission of our CFO, Brad Smith. And we really, had built just what we thought was one of the best-in-class AAV manufacturing facilities. We can talk about what we've done with that subsequently. We ended up forming a joint venture with Oxford Biomedica called Oxford Biomedica Solutions, and Tim Kelly, my former COO, is CEO of that. So we can get into that model and why we did that. But our ability to move our programs forward didn't match up with the size and the capability of the manufacturing that we had built. So we figured out how to monetize that and essentially, have our cake and eat it too. So it is so critical to have that capability under your control, and we figured out a way to do that. And so we have access to that now. It's something that we built that we really feel is, one of the highest quality AAV manufacturing facilities in the world. So that's kind of how we approached it.
Thank you. Eric, we've talked a lot about the transition from kind of an academic setting and really seeing the need for a larger facility to serve the patient population. Can you speak to your experience in taking that smaller, established, well-oiled machine and building greater capacity to serve?
Yeah, absolutely. So to set it up, Andelyn comes out of Nationwide Children's Hospital, often referred to as NCH. And so NCH for the past 20 years has been doing hundreds and hundreds of batches of GMP manufacturing for many of the leading companies and academics and nonprofit groups out there. And in 2019, it was decided that we were losing our leadership and letting our client base down in the fact that we could only take our clients to phase 1, 2A. And so the decision was made to get a strategic partner and essentially sink a very significant capital sum into the ground to build out a 250,000 square foot preclinical and clinical and commercial facility, which I'm proud to say is, as of this week, is now open. And we've signed our first late phase to commercial clients. And so really the journey was understanding that the market really needed this end-to-end solution, providing to what Arthur said, you really have to get past that valley of death in between preclinical to clinical, Clin 1 to 2, and late phase. And the quicker you can do it, the quicker you can move on to that phase and you can pass that valley of death, which is coined by one of the CEOs that I've talked to in the past. And so, our goal is to really reduce that timeline from getting your plasmids, your analytics, and getting ultimately at the end point, getting that solution, because it means it's going to impact patients much, much quicker. And so it was an important decision that the administration decided, but it was a strategic decision. They understood that they needed to go at scale, and they made a major, major investment, a major commitment to that. and really for the companies in this room, so that we could support you, so you don't have to go out and build your own facility. And so I think that's the other thing, is the variabilization of that supply chain is really important. You need a partner like ourselves that has scale, that has the capabilities, but at the same time, is going to take your input and really be a strategic partner. And so, and take it as if it was their own. And I think that's the real key in this, is that back in the 2015 to 2018 timeframe, the variabilization of supply chain wasn't there. You could not get capacity. Now there's good, capable capacity, and that was the vision of taking from NCH, which is a nonprofit, to going to the for-profit Andelyn.
Thank you. Frédéric,
Sure.
we talked a lot about the decision-making matrix you went through with your company, and I think it would be great if you would share your thinking behind what manufacturing model you wanted to use at this phase and forward.
Sure, because we made a different decision. We made a decision not to build our own facility. So even though, maybe I should say just a word about what we're doing. So we have a technology that is disrupting the way people manufacture iPSC cells and iPSC-derived cells. And what we do in a word is that we encapsulate in microcapsules of alginate iPSC cells before we grow them, before we differentiate them. And then we remove the capsule before we inject them into animals today, patients tomorrow. So, and it's a disruptive technology. And basically, if you want to switch people from one technology to a new one, you cannot start with a plant, because there is nobody in the plant. There is no, So for us, it was clear that it was useless to think about spending the capital to bring the technology to a manufacturing size while we were the only user. We are a young company. We are a 3-year-old company, so pretty young. So we decided to go to CDMOs. And the journey to choose the right CDMO was pretty long. And in a nutshell, at the end of the day, we made even for CROs, CROs and CDMOs, we made the choice to work with companies where we had a good control, a good grip on the teams, where we were welcome in the labs, where we were welcome working with the teams hand in hand. And that was very important to us. So because we didn't want to go down the road of building our own capacity, but we really needed to be in control. It's the first asset, new technology, it's our baby, and we cannot leave that to people that we have maybe trained, we're not sure, you're allowed to look at the window, but not more. That's not enough, So we made the choice of, let's say, smaller organizations, but where there were like more extension of our teams, and people are really working together. But so it was the choice we made. We'll see now in the future. It was the right choice, but
it's the right choice for you right now.
It's for the, yes, exactly.
Dan, we had a very lively conversation at BPI, and I'd like to go back to that conversation. We had a conversation about, as an industry, is there a way to share best practices, to share efficiencies that we've found to move pipelines faster to the patients? And we also had a pretty lively conversation, we had fun, on is there enough capacity?
Absolutely. So let's think about that first one, about how we can really move things better through the system and how we do that. Part of Charles River now, having a manufacturing division in Charles River is great, because we're able to support customers all the way through that value chain, from discovery aspects all the way through the safety assessment in clinical toxicology and everything now into manufacturing. We have cell supply coming in, so we can get hold of donor materials, and we've got the testing all wrapped around that. But even then, when we think about that, how do we sort of work for best practice? Because, you know, we've got certain things under control: plasmids, viral vectors, cell therapy, and it's one of, you know, and this is my opinion, perhaps not Charles River's opinion, but my opinion here is actually we all do the similar things. You make AAV, we can make AAV, other people can make viral vectors, and I bet you've built your own capacity because you want control on it. But it's probably not a lot different from the way we make AAV either. And other people do AAV and other things. And I think as an industry, we're all doing a little bit because we want control of things. But in the end, wouldn't it be better if we opened it up and actually said, you know, and again, this is my own take on it, any AAV process, any viral vector process is really, really inefficient and rubbish at the moment. I'm sorry, but they are. They're just unproductive, that we get not great quality out of them. We see lots of failures at CMC going forward with the FDA. And unless we do something different together to solve it, all we're going to do is little iterations on innovation around things. And I'll put our platform in there as well around this, and we're not really going to solve the issue of it. So it comes back to the other point that you made, Susan. Is there too much capacity, or what's the right capacity? I think there's plenty of capacity in the market now. What we're crying out for is capability. We need to get together and solve the capability issue to be able to get things really fast through proper platforms or proper approaches to it into clinic as early as possible. We can then differentiate after that. And I don't know how we can do that as a business model for manufacturing investment, which is the title of this, but I just want to sort of put it out there. We've got to think slightly differently about it. I think it's great that we all do these things, you know, with loads of CDMOs coming up, Andelyn, Homology, us, we'll do this. We'll claim we've got unique positioning around it, but fundamentally, we do it all the same way. We take some cells, we throw some plasmids in there, we make it, we do a little tweak, and we purify it. Now, that's very simple, but it drives me mad that we're thinking that we can actually constrain nature and really control nature, whereas a virus is trying to make lots more copies of itself, and it doesn't care really what it's packaged in there. And it would be better if we could all get together, solve every, you know, you've got some great bits in your process, we have some great bits in ours, put it together, get it together with Andelyn, come up with a standardized approach to get things faster into clinic quicker. We can differentiate after that. That's just my thoughts on it. But I did say to Susan I'd be slightly controversial in it.
Just to comment on it, I think that if you talk about infrastructure and capacity, you know, people are building 2,000-liter tanks now, but who's going to run them?
Yeah.
Like,
should we really need 2,000
it's the talent
as well?
deficit that we have that I think is really hurting the industry. And you know, I think one big point that often gets overlooked is when we talk about manufacturing, everybody thinks about that 2,000-liter tank or that 500-liter bioreactor. Process development is really where it all starts. And if you don't have that capability, and we made sure we built that first, then, you know, I think we're going to talk about, you know, is the product the process? Well, if you don't have a great vector, and you don't have great analytics, and you don't have, you know, great ways of assessing the quality, because the FDA has certainly raised the bar significantly. It used to be you could make, you know, material for a phase 1 study, and your specs could be like this. Well, guess what? It's like this now. In a phase 1 study, it's what, you know, it used to be what you would need to launch. I think those are the gaps, and I think the sharing that you mentioned, Dan, is hugely important. And we don't do enough of that in the industry. And ARM, I think, is really tried to help, you know, have standards and guidelines that people can look to as what the bar is going to be if you want to get an IND cleared and if you want to move into kind of the commercial phase. So I think those are the gaps. So I'm either disagreeing with you or agreeing with you.
We can agree to disagree on that.
But I think we're on the same page.
Ish. No, but I completely agree. I think, you know, and I would even take it further back. Sometimes I think we've got to, you know, we've got an opportunity within CRL to do this. How do we build manufacturability into discovery? How do we capture it even earlier?
That's big.
Because by the time we get it into development, we're stuck with a certain bit, and then by the time we get it into manufacturing, we're really stuck at that point. So I think a lot of knowledge sharing, a lot of best practice sharing early on to allow us to get stuff and standardize the approach through to like first in man. And then from that point, we can go our separate ways and agree to disagree on things. But I think that would be fundamental to move the industry forward.
Eric's just needing to jump in.
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Chomping at the bit.
Well, I just wanted to provide, a perspective of a group that's been doing this for 20 years. I think there are folks that are very capable out there. And so if you talk to our chief operations officer who's been doing this a long time, he says there's a difference between capacity and capable capacity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think this is the key, is in your selection of your partners, you have to not only look at the scale. Okay, you've got a very big scale, but do you have the people to run it? And so we have a beautiful facility that's been audited by a QP, said top tier facility. But if you don't have the people are what make the difference. And so that's the real key critical thing, is that experience level. And I think over the past several years, there's been a rush to build this capacity. And I think the issue has been, you have to make sure you have the people, the analytics, the plasmids, the raw materials, the pathway to commercial. Everyone wants to get this to patients, and so at a broader level. So that requires that we get these to commercial, and I think these are the things that need to go in, and you really have to sit down and look at the experience level that of the people that are working at the facilities, because that's the difference.
And Behzad, you have taken a different approach with a highly automated approach. So I would love to hear your thoughts.
No, absolutely, because it was an article actually, I think it was last week, when the Bluebird therapies came out. I think it was Peter Mark, said there is a gorilla, 800 pounds gorilla, and this is the reimbursement.
Right.
But I really want to bring your attention to the, not 800, but 8,000 pounds elephant sitting in the bioreactors in the clean room. And this is about the biology. I think we have forgotten about the biology and its optimization. What I'm saying right now, we are very focusing on the efficient manufacturing, but not manufacturing of efficient therapies. That's, I think, the mindset that we might change. And of course, the technology was not necessarily available a few years ago, but right now, when we look at the technology with the bioinformatic combined with the extremely high scale throughput, both in terms of the cell engineering, but also in terms of the cell and operational condition, manufacturing conditions together, that actually can give you extremely high output and to really find the right combination, to get to the manufacturing. The example of that are several. Just look at the UPenn, for example, on the CAR-T side. When you look at the CAR-T autologous 14 days, and if you take, the cocoon system, from Lonza, everything is automated.
Right.
There is no rooms, to cut or to optimize. There is no labors. Everything is digitized. But when you look at the biology and you understand, basically, maybe it's better to keep a smaller subgroup of the T cells without expansion are more powerful than a large number of the T cells after expansion. That's where suddenly you reduce 14 days to 24 hours. So this is the power of the biology I need to remember, and we have done that. We have done for Moderna, just on the optimization by a factor of 4 running during 11 weeks. We have done that with Aldervan, for example, for the vaccine capping enzyme. We increased the output by a factor of 10 using the platform on the cell engineering as well as on the process optimization. So that's, I try to remember, to remind you, the biology is there, and this is really, we need to have a more focus on that.
And I hear...
Can I comment?
Oh,
Behzad's comment?
absolutely.
Yeah, there's a limit to what you're saying, is that we talk biology in cell therapy, we need quantity of cells. So people are dreaming of scaling out. So one guy can do 5 billion of cells. So if I need 500 billion, I can put 100 people doing the same thing in parallel. We don't believe that's sustainable. We don't believe it will even give a batch, like a consistent batch over time. 100 people cannot be synchronized,
Yes.
like machines. So, and maybe machines will take on, but will take over. But
Yes.
there's a technology gap also.
There is technology gap, but again, I think the technology platform are available. We need just to take the time, to go through that. And this is, the going fast, to the market. We take something like a black box and we push it to the market. Because come back, to the example, if you increase your output by a factor of 10, and actually we have done, for example, coming back to the CAR T side, we have a bit, instead of taking 3 or 4 construct and trying to bring it to the market, we have actually done libraries of 10,000. We can do also have millions. But just in the 10,000, we have found actually there is a subgroup that they're 100 times more resistant to the exhaustion. So if you take something is much more performant, you need automatically less. So if you have an output by a factor of 10, then instead of going to 2,000 liters bioreactors, actually at 200 would benefit you. So at the same time, you cut on several basically avenues. One is the time to the market because you avoid the scale up. Another one, and then the other effect actually is having a better capital in terms of the capex when you build, and then better operational costs. So that's really happened. So when you look at to the capacity actually with this mega trend, including also the mega trend in terms of the precision medicine, which is on top of that. So I think there is, of course, maybe overcapacity actually maybe in the market when you look at this.
I agree. I think you're absolutely right. I think it's exactly that. That's sort of my point, really. And you said it, and you illustrated that really nicely. If we can make our processes better, more productive, higher quality, more robust, we can bring the scale of manufacturing investment down because we don't need 2,000 litre, 4,000 litre, whatever. I know we sort of all hark back and look at it, but I think there's a lot to learn from the past. We all understand monoclonal antibodies. When we started making those, you got hardly anything out of the bioreactor. Productivities have gone up and things. And I think as an industry, we've got to start thinking about how to apply this type of technology, how to get together and think about solving these problems. Because I think fundamentally, if we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to make a difference, but we're not going to make as much of a difference if we actually solve the problem now and allow cost of goods to come down and access to patients to go up.
Also in terms of the delivery, is the same concept.
Right.
If you deliver at the right place, that's also is efficiency, not necessarily in the bioreactors, but at the end of the day, in terms of the dosage, you need much less actually.
I think this is, we're in a new field. We're in, cell and gene therapy, and we're going through the same thing that monoclonal antibodies went through 30 years ago, right? So it's not like this can't be solved, and I think we will get to the place where COGS will get down to a reasonable level, and a place where we're able to really drive forward very quickly our products for our patients. It's just we have to iterate, and I think part of me feels like, and it's to your point, Dan, we just have to share our knowledge here to make it go faster. Instead of taking 10 years to get from milligrams to kilograms of monoclonals, it should be a hell of a lot faster now. It's just like we seem to be not learning from our past in biotech.
It reminds me of that Homer Simpson episode where he keeps pressing the button and getting zapped. And I think we've got to get away from that actually. But I guess the question I'd have to you, Arthur, is how do we do that then? Because, as CDMOs, we're all very, I don't know, we're competitive, absolutely, as a competitive, but I would argue we don't need to be that competitive because there's enough coming through the pipeline and there's enough for all of us out there.
Well, we better figure it out because the FDA is going to
we're getting driven that way
make sure that we are making high quality material to go into patients.
Correct.
They've already put their foot down and said, look guys, you guys better get better at what you're doing. So we better figure it out fast.
And they're asking for our help too.
They are.
That's right.
Because to everyone's point, we're all learning.
Yep.
So now we're working closely with the FDA because they're learning too. We're learning, and I think you start to see some of that sharing come out in conversations and guidance to try to set a pathway to make it easier for those coming up behind. Because historically, you just keep, somebody learns a really hard lesson and then you go, oh gosh, I'm not going to do that. And then you go and learn the next hard lesson and you go, that either, right?
But I'd love to hear from the CDMO perspective, How do you do that when the information you're getting from your client is confidential?
Right.
And you cannot share that, publicly, obviously, because that would be wrong. But how can we do that? How does a CDMO do that now? Anybody have any?
Well, I would propose that there's a few approaches here, and if we all think about it, there is a great opportunity that everyone in this room has an opportunity to look at. There are 7,000 to 10,000 rare diseases out there, most of which are non-commercially viable, to the tune of I've seen reports on the NIH website of $7 to $8 trillion, right? And so I know that we're working with governments and the FDA and the EMA and other regulatory agencies, and I think it's really important that this group, number one, understands that moving the innovation forward, we have to continue to do that, right? That's the number one. Number two, you have to make sure safety is there for the patients. If we don't, that's the quickest way to stop the industry. So those two things are really important, and that's why it's really important that we as CDMOs are putting a lot of quality into things. We have very experienced people, and we continue to work with groups like the Bespoke Consortium. So we're part of the Bespoke Consortium with one of our investors, who's Danaher, and essentially part of that is helping to kind of find ways to bring those best practices out. And there's things that are not top secret out there that we can share. And part of this also is the experience of the people that are in the rooms. We have to continue to build that. We have to build a workforce that has the knowledge base to be able to do great work and be able to be consistent across each of the activities. So one of the things I would say is that, if we say that there's too much capacity, let's work with our governments to boost up this target of, targeting rare diseases. How do we target those? There's 25 to 30 million, just 25 to 30 million Americans impacted with this. $7 to $8 trillion annually across the world. That's a great, big, hairy goal for all of us to target. And I think it starts with, getting some funding from governments, getting these programs funded, but also, continuing to sponsor some of these other programs that are cross-functional, cross companies. I know in Bespoke, we work with multiple different companies out there. So that's just one perspective. I think there's many others that can apply here.
Maybe I can share some real-life experience with the new technology, because we have a truly scalable technology. So we can go from 10 ml to 10 liter, same setup. So I think it's unique in the field, and people working with us acknowledge it's unique in the field. When we turn to CDMOs and say, okay guys, we have something that can really unlock the market, they say, well, where are the clients? They say, well, we are a young company, we need to convert people, we need to get adoption. So we're doing it. So we have our own business development people, but none of the CDMO we talk to, we are ready to just play the game and just try to play the game. So I think it's, you're right. If we really want to put in common the knowledge, the willingness to serve the patients, yeah, we could do that, but that's not the way the world we are in works. So it's not the way it works. So it will take more time. At some point, I hope we will be successful, but it will take a bit more time.
No, I agree. I think that adoption barrier is difficult. Sorry to interrupt, but as a CDMO, it is difficult because no one wants, as a customer, no one wants to come to us and utilize a technology that's not tried and tested. We work in a very conservative industry. We know that. But I do think there are, as we talk about here, how do we set up the structures to gain access to some of the technologies? How do we work in partnerships with each other to do this?
Venture capitalists.
But I mean, in principle, so we run a strong partnership strategy at Charles River to go and do exactly this. Look for interesting technology out there. In our in our CDMO base, we're thinking, well, actually, you know, as a service provider, our board challenges me often all the time. What is the next modality? What should we do?
Sure.
And I keep saying we shouldn't do one thing. We need to do a little bit of everything. We need to build an infrastructure of capacity and capability that we can flex and pivot accordingly as things move in the marketplace and the therapies. But then work with companies like yours and other people's and other CDMOs as well about building flexible capacity. And by doing that, you'd actually get some of that best practice sharing flowing around the system anyway. So I think we have to be a little bit, we are very collaborative as an industry. I've seen that, you know, all my life. But I think in this space, we have to start thinking about how to be even more collaborative, how to work better in partnership with people and not against people. There's enough therapies out there and there's enough patients out there to do this. And if we could all somehow sort of do it that way, and again, I don't know how to do that yet. I mean, and then this is why, you know, I find my old boss is sitting in the audience here, and he always laughs at me when I talk about new business models. And he says, there's no such thing as a new business model. All you need to do is make money at the end of the day.
Yeah, sure.
And he's right. He's laughing at, but he's right. But fundamentally, you know, nothing we're thinking about here is new. We just need to think slightly differently and put it together in a different construct to deliver it.
And I think just a quick point there, which is you just need to make money at it. I think that's important, right?
Yeah.
So let's not say that that's not important. And so I think that there are many flexible CDMOs out there, like yours, like ours, that are willing to tech transfer things in. But it's, you know, there's only so much collaboration that you can do. If you have a technology that's ready to scale, talk to these CDMOs. There's ways to tech transfer it in and then take it transformationally from preclinical talks to clinical and get it into the pathway for commercialization.
So now I can put my previous CDMO hat and give my personal opinion around that. Is because CDMO is not the right place in the value chain. You know what I'm saying? You know, especially in the cell therapy, because the product and the process is the same. So when you go to a CDMO, you know, they want to have somebody has already adapted your technology. So you need actually to go farther in front.
Absolutely.
And capture this market, and then basically
And
the
transfer
CDMO
it.
comes.
Yes,
Exactly.
I think that's partially
that's
true,
it.
but CD, the development side of things, of the CDMO, there should be some level of engagement and ability to continue to develop that. And so otherwise you're at a CMO, right? You don't have any development. It's just, I'm just transferring my process to you, and we're going to go from there.
Yeah, but most of the cell therapy companies are building their own facilities. Huh?
Yeah.
They're not going to CDMO. So
I think this gets back to the variabilization of the supply chain. You know, and so
there are many reasons.
GMP facilities are very expensive to operate. We've seen many of our colleagues that have been impacted by overbuilding. And I'm speaking more from the gene therapy side than the cell therapy side. So
that's right.
I think these are things that we just have to make sure we leverage the right facilities at the right time, and good CDMOs are out there to help as strategic partners, as Daniel shared.
Right.
We promised a lively conversation. But it's important. I mean, all these perspectives are really important to take out, to look at, to discuss. So as an industry, we can come together and meet the needs of developers, patients, and the entire community, because this industry has incredible potential. So I think everybody here is dedicated to the same cause.
Absolutely.
Throughout this thread, I heard bits and pieces. You know what I'm going to say, right? How do we get the people? How do we train the people? And if anyone has any best practices, we would all love to hear it, because everybody's struggling with the same problem. And we can't keep taking from one place and putting people in the other. So what's the solution?
I can lead off. To me, it's culture, number one, to attract talent and keep talent. I think the other thing, you and I talked about, Susan, I think universities, colleges, medical schools are starting to get wise and have dedicated biotech programs and train people hands-on in the lab that can kind of get their degree, walk off the stage and straight into a job where they're a contributing member of that company right out of the gate. I think that's getting better. So I think there's glimmers of hope, but I do think that it's really easy. My son's 26 years old, 4 years out of University of Maryland with a BS, right? And back 5 years ago, nobody would hire him with just a bachelor's degree because you don't have experience. Well, those days are gone. We need those people. And so I think if you develop a good mentoring program in your company, in your CDMO, where you can bring people in and really get them up and running right away. We really, at Homology, really have built a lot of relationships with the universities around us that have those kind of programs. UMass Lowell is a great example of a state school who can just chuck out great, high-quality students that can be really valuable employees right away. So I think, at least from my perspective, those are some of the key things I think that we can rely on to kind of keep that talent pool rich.
Yeah, and I heard you say also something, because I think you spoke to this too, Eric, about they come out of college, then the burden is on the company to provide some kind of training. And Eric, you touched on that too. So when they come in, then what do we do with them? How do we get them up and running and contributing quickly?
Yeah, I think we've all experienced this. Workforce development, in speaking with state and local and federal governments, this is a big issue, and there's a lot of development going on. I know BioOhio has an initiative across Ohio that they're doing that. We're based out of Columbus, Ohio. And I think there's very successful programs. I know Andelyn, very specifically, we have a 2-week training program for everyone that comes into the company. So everyone has the same baseline when they start. We also partner with different universities, OSU, Columbus State, various other universities, and we're developing out 6-month, 12-month, 2-year programs with these groups and providing our expertise and input to your points earlier so that we start to get more of a consistent understanding of how to deliver these type of high-paying jobs to people where they can move into this field that is going to be a long-lasting field. So I think it's on us in both government as well as industry to be able to partner on this and understand it's a huge and important issue that we all have to address. And you also have to make sure that your company is a company culture that pulls the type of people in that you want. And so I think to those points, I think you have to build a culture and be very specific how you're doing that when you develop out.
So I could add my thoughts on this one. So I can do it from a UK perspective because I think it exemplifies it really well, actually. So in the UK, there is a number of training schemes specifically focused at the development of people in the advanced therapies area. So this can range from people that don't have degrees at the moment that go on to an advanced therapies apprenticeship program. Now, each company can bid into that into the UK, and effectively you can get apprentices to come in, you get them the basic training, and they also do their college degree at the same time they come out of there. But the important thing about that is that they become a cohort of apprenticeships or apprentices that actually talk to each other, that go in and out of different companies as well. So you start to get that best practice sharing between that as well. And then there's other levels up that, so you can work from a degree level apprenticeship all the way up to sort of master level and doctoral level apprenticeships as well. But it takes the companies and in the UK, the government to get together to help fund that, support that, drive that. And then there's other training programs about how do you train a cohort of people that are sort of the rising stars in your your workforce to become the leaders for tomorrow as well. So again, I think it does take a lot of partnership and a lot of collaboration between everyone in the industry. So not just the CDMOs, not just the developing companies, but the service provision companies to get together and work on this together. And then work with the local universities. We're very fortunate, again, from a UK perspective, to have the National Health Service. So again, we can train the workforce in the National Health Service so that as it comes out of the back of the manufacturing, how do you actually deliver these cell therapies to patients as well? And join that up. And I spend a lot of my time talking to all age groups of school children about our sector and how brilliant it is in our sector at the moment. We've just come back off the global pandemic where we've proven that we can actually make a difference to people's lives out there massively. Our currency at the moment from come and work in our sector is really, really high. I think we've got to build on that and through these sort of collaborative approaches really highlight this is a great place to work. But in order to do that, we have to have the infrastructure around training in place to bring all this in. Because it's a people industry. Again, we're going to need as many people as we can to service as many patients as we can in the future.
So when you look at most of the organization today, they have a talent acquisition group.
Right.
Do we see a group called the talent retention? No, but the difficulties really come back to what you're saying, Arthur. It's really all about the culture.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at the Ginkgo, it's an amazing case because we are in the middle of the Boston, very competitive, very talented young people. Retention rate 96%. And come back exactly to what you're saying. Culture, culture, culture. Because it's easy to acquire, but really what is hurt companies is this turnover.
To be slightly controversial, do you not think that's a good thing? Because actually workforce development moves around then as well. So again, I always say to my HR team, it doesn't really matter. If you've got someone and trained them for 2 years, you've got 2 years out of them. You should be proud that then they can move on somewhere else and make a difference there. But I agree with you, culture is really important. But what's the right level of turnover?
No, you're right. If you look at the macro level, then what you're saying, if you look at the whole country, as an ecosystem, then what you're saying is absolutely correct. If you look at the company level, it becomes a different division. Fully agree.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was just sort of trying to think collaboratively.
Yes, absolutely.
Now you know why the pre-call was a lot of fun, right?
Exactly.
So in the spirit of collaboration, why don't we open the last 10 minutes to questions?
Sure.
Yes.
No one's feeling brave?
There's one there.
The cube is rolling.
Okay, let's take a value proposition and see if this doesn't get people thinking about how you can get people focused on outcomes. If you as a group collectively say that I think there's a way that we can reduce the trailing BLA by 90 days to 180 days if you fund us together to figure out how we can work together smarter, I think a lot of people would listen to you. Because if you look at the amount of time on how long it goes from people filing their BLA and having CMC issues, you could say 12 to 24 months. And that's a lot of burn rate. That's a lot of money. So I'm just suggesting that as an idea to get people to focus in on how you can work collaboratively, and probably everybody trying to fund you too.
I think you're absolutely right, which is how do we really reduce those times? And I think it just comes down to how do you make those raw materials come in quicker? So that's a supply chain issue. That's also, are you resourcing so that you can really control that as much as possible? How are you focused on the analytics?
Much different way to approach the issue because it's an outcome that has a lot of potential measures.
I couldn't hear you.
It's a much different outcome, and to get people to focus in, I have no idea 12 months of burn rate because you can't file your BLA what that's worth, but I'm sure you guys can put your heads together and figure out what that is. that's a lot. I'm just trying to suggest something. You talked about how can you work collaboratively together to talk about what you have to do in terms of profiling, looking at the potency. That'll get everybody's attention.
Well, and that's exactly it. And that part of what Andelyn is doing, and I'm sure our colleagues here are doing, is trying to reduce that time. So we are going to market saying we're going to reduce that time by 50%. And that's pretty provocative, right? 50%, that equates to a small company, if your burn rate is 1 to 2 million, you know, that could be $5 to $10 million savings. If, let's just say it's 5 month savings there. A company, a publicly traded company that has $2.2 billion in the bank at $60 million a month burn rate, that's $300 million, right? And so part of this is attacking the amount of time that it takes. That means you need to put expertise and make sure that you really reduce that supply chain process and focus in on the analytics. I think that's a place, the analytics is something that comes up often, which is let's get alignment on the analytics so that we can get down and then really get after that. That's one place. I know plasmids is another place. We've invested in plasmids to really reduce that from months and months, in certain cases years, to get that down to a 3 to 4 month window. Huge impact to you getting to your BLA. And so by partnering, we also have Aldebaran as a set of colleagues. So if we need to call them in, that's a great way for us to partner on behalf of our clients. So these are just some examples of things that we've been strategizing over the past 12 to 18 months to really reduce that time, because it is super critical.
I think Eric, you bring up some great points. I think what we could do is work backwards from the end, right? So when you file your BLA, you're not going to get hung up on CMC. I mean, CMC is usually what's
Right.
you know, the rate limiter
It's
in your IND getting
4x
accepted
large
or appealed.
molecule.
So,
Yeah.
so what's, you know, we need to understand, what are we aiming for? The way that we kind of know what we're aiming for is the feedback we get on our INDs, or feedback we get from pre-IND meetings or pre-BLA meetings. So I know the FDA is working hard to kind of set those guidelines for cell and gene therapy. I know ARM is really trying to kind of push that, but if we knew that, I think you could really save a lot of time, in addition to all the things that you brought up. But I really think that you go, like, people fly blind going in with a you know, 50% full to empty ratio of AAV, thinking, okay, that's going to fly these days. Guess what? Not going to fly these days. So I think if those were clearer, I think we'd be able to speed it up quite a bit.
Eric, I have a question for you, actually. See, you know, the control of the supply chain is really important. But can we do that differently? Do we all have to own each bit of that supply chain? So, you know, you've developed plasmid capability. We have plasmid capability. Aldebaran has plasmid capability. We all have vector capability. There's cell capability. There's analytical capability. As an industry, again, we have to make money, yes. But do we all need to own every bit of it? Can we work collaboratively to flex our capacity better? For the benefit of us from a business perspective, but also for the benefit of the patient. And I wonder if we have to think about it slightly differently. Instead of spending money developing each of us to have our own capability, how can we join up the supply chain? How can we work in partnership to actually flow it around the system better?
I think it all comes down to that quality piece, right? Mm-hmm. And so you have to make sure the quality is there. Yeah. It's just like this idea between GMP-S versus GMP. In Europe, there's only GMP, right? It's either something could harm a patient or it could not. GMP, it is. In the US, we're still deciding on that side of things, right? And so at the end of the day, I think it comes back to, Arthur, your point, which is let's try and set very clear goals out there. And I think we can help each other. Matter of fact, I know that you know, our team has, you know, for many competitors in the supply chain issues over the last 2 years, hey, listen, I don't have this. Well, we'll give it to you. We have extras. And we fortunately have a very strong supply chain team that made sure that we had those. And so these are the type of things that we as a group have to help each other.
Yeah.
How we do those specific points, I think maybe we have to talk about that at the bar.
I mean, yeah, I agree. You raised an interesting point about supply chain issues over the last 2 years because pandemic issues here.
There's a bar here?
Somewhere.
Oh, okay.
But I think it's interesting. So, you know, when I was the CSO at Cobra there, we were involved in the scale-up and the transfer of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. And, you know, there's people in the audience here that we work with that were competitors. Oxford Biomedica being one, I'll call them out, Helix being another. We all got together, shared best practice, shared how to do it, because there was a common goal of getting something onto the market. And I think that we should learn from that, because there should still be a common goal, treating rare disease, treating the patients.
I'd love to do that with the 7,000 to 10,000 rare diseases.
Yeah.
It'll keep all of us busy, and we can help tens of millions of people save trillions of dollars.
No, I agree. We should find the bar now.
Excellent point.
You offering to buy me a drink at the bar?
So, we're down to the final 2 minutes. Any burning questions that they can answer in 2 minutes?
No.
Is that possible?
I don't think so with this group, which is good.
Answer. You take the answer.
I'm Karen Walker. I'm from Kyverna Therapeutics. I wanted to say I was interested in many of the points that were made. I think one big elephant in the room that we skate around a lot is that cell and gene therapies is not one modality. Unlike, you know, antibodies, they are one modality. And understanding how they work in the body, not only their mechanism of action, but the biology of the disease that they're meant to treat, that is a huge puzzle. And it isn't going to be solved by taking the learnings from the biologics world and applying it to this world. I think that the conversations you had about sharing best practices and learning from each other is absolutely where we need to be, and also changing the way we protect our innovations. So I wonder if we could think about forming more consortiums and then providing innovation accessible to the members of the consortium in a way that would really advance the field and provide value for patients, but still returning on investment for the innovators. What are your thoughts?
In less than a minute.
And go.
I'm not
Yes.
going. I think that was a great point.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for the industry to really kind of sit back and think about hard, like, how do we get that done? I think, I mean, I don't know if anybody else has any ideas. I think that's just, it's a big, hairy goal for us to go after, and I think that's what we all are trying to do here.
I agree. I think we need to think about those sort of grand challenges that we're trying to address and then work in maybe that sort of pre-competitive space to bring in academic centres, to bring in industry to really drive to the heart of the problem and do that collaboratively. Yes.
Yeah, completely agree. I'd say the answer is yes. We should do that. We see some good starts to that. The Bespoke is an example of that. There are others out there, and I think, you know, there's a big appetite. I've talked to the leaders at EMA. I've talked to folks around the world. There is a big appetite to do that. It does come down to, and I do this in my night job, which is working this rare disease. How can we target these? And so at the end of the day, I think there's a great opportunity in front of us there.
Maybe that's next year's topic. Thank you all very much. Hope you have a great conference.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you.